My name is Harper Sloan. I'm 29 years old, and I'm going to tell you about the night my family tried to vote me out like I was a bad business decision. Last 4th of July, my mother stood in front of 29 relatives in our living room in Ashford Cove, Maine, lifted a folded sheet of paper like it was Holy Scripture, and asked them to vote on whether I still deserved to belong. Every single hand went up against me. She looked straight at me, the same woman who packed my lunches, who taught me to ride a bike, who once cried when I left for college, and she said, "Calm as weather. We've been carrying your dead weight for 29 years, Harper. Now it's over." I thought that was the worst moment of my life. I was wrong, because 30 seconds later, the front door opened, and a man none of us had seen in 12 years walked in carrying a small metal lockbox from a bank. And what was inside that box made every person in that room unable to look my mother in the eye, ever again. Before I go on, if you end up connecting with this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely feel it, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now let me take you back to July 3rd, the night before the holiday, when I almost decided not to go. I'm sitting in my car in my mother's driveway, engine still running, hands locked on the steering wheel at 10 and 2 like I'm about to take a driving test. The house is lit up in every window. Shadows move behind the curtains. I can smell charcoal, sunscreen, and cut grass. And I already know who's where. Mom in the kitchen running the show, Dad somewhere quiet with a beer, my sister Eliza setting the table because she always sets the table, because peace in our house has always been her unpaid job. I should go in. I know I should. But last year sits in my chest like a stone. Last 4th of July, right between the burgers and the fireworks, my mother announced to the entire family, smiling like she was telling a joke, "Harper's salary probably can't even cover her own groceries, let alone what she owes us." Nobody protested. They just kept chewing like humiliation was another side dish. Here's the part that still makes my throat tighten. I'm a school counselor. I've been financially independent since I was 18. I took out my own loans. I pay my own rent, my own insurance, my own everything. I have never asked my family for money, not once. But my mother tells people I did, and they believe her every single time because she tells lies like she's reading facts off a clipboard. And when a lie is repeated at every holiday for long enough, it starts to sound like history, and history starts to sound like proof. My phone buzzes. A text from Eliza. "Mom's been up since 4 a.m. Don't be late." You know how she gets. I stare at that message and almost laugh, because yes, I know how she gets. She gets sweet in public, sharp in private, and unstoppable when she's decided the story she wants told. I turn off the engine, step out into the warm night, and on the porch, with my hand on the door handle, something in my gut whispers, "Tonight is not going to go the way you think." Inside, the dining room is packed. Too many forced smiles, a table stretched with extra chairs, kids running around ankles. Someone's already arguing about politics in the corner, loud enough to prove they're not nervous. My mother sits at the head like she always does, Dad on her right, Eliza on her left, and I get the end seat near the kitchen door like a punishment disguised as logistics. I hang my coat on the hook and immediately hear my mother's voice float from the kitchen, bright and performative. "Oh, she actually showed up this year. Paul, set one more plate. Nee, the cheap ones." A few people laugh like that's normal. I swallow it because swallowing is what I'm best at in this family. Mom stands for a toast. "Family is everything," she says. "The ones who carry the weight and the ones we carry." She pauses just long enough to glance at me. A few people shift. Nobody corrects her. I focus on my plate, but I can feel it. Something is off. People avoid my eyes. Conversations die when I walk past. Dad said something might happen tonight. Dad said something might happen tonight. My mind snags on one word. Dad. Her dad. Uncle Dean. The man my mother erased from the family 12 years ago. Then Jenna stops, because my mother is staring at us from across the table with that pleasant smile she wears right before she draws blood in public. Halfway through dinner, Mom sets down her fork, dabs her lips, and turns to me like she's asking about the weather. So, Harper, how's the apartment? Still managing on that little paycheck of yours? Polite laughter ripples down the table, the kind people do when they're following the leader. I keep my voice steady. I'm doing fine, Mom. She nods like she's proud of how patient she's being. Of course you are, she says. You always say that. You've always been good at pretending everything's fine. Then she turns to the room. I've been keeping a running tab, she says. You all know I don't like to talk about money, but sometimes you have to face reality. She reaches into her cardigan pocket and pulls out a folded paper with a black clip. She doesn't open it. She just shows it, like the sight of paper is enough to establish truth. I wrote down the numbers, she says. We'll discuss it after dessert. Then she takes a bite like she didn't just place a grenade on the table. My hands shake under my lap because my mother doesn't bluff unless she has an audience, and she doesn't bring props unless she plans to use them. After dinner, instead of pie, she claps twice like she's calling a meeting. Living room, she says brightly. Family matter. The moment I step in, my stomach drops. The furniture is rearranged, in chairs in a semicircle facing an open space like a courtroom. Coffee table pushed aside. Someone even moved the lamp, like lighting matters for the performance. This wasn't spontaneous. This was staged. I consider leaving, but I know what happens if I do. My mother will sigh to the room. See? She always runs. And in a town like Ashford Cove, that version of me would follow me into the grocery store, into the school hallway. See, into every place where people look at you like they already know what you did. So I stay. My father sits in the second row of chairs, not front, not back, holding a beer like it's a life raft. He won't look at me. Eliza sits with her hands folded tight in her lap, like she's trying to hold herself together with her fingers. My mother steps into the center, puts on her reading glasses, and lets her voice tremble just enough to sound noble. I've been carrying this burden alone for too long, she says. Tonight, I need the family's help to make a decision. She unfolds the paper slowly like it's sacred. Item 1, she reads, the cost of raising Harper from birth through 18. Housing, food, clothing, medical. Adjusted total, $138,000. Murmurs like the number itself proves guilt. Item 2, college support Harper has never repaid. Tuition supplements, books, emergency funds. Total, $29,500. My throat tightens. There was no support. There were loans and night shifts and ramen dinners, and the kind of exhaustion that makes you forget your own birthday. I open my mouth, because my body wants to defend itself even when my brain knows it won't matter. Please let me finish, she says, palm out, smiling, and the room lets her. Item 3, she continues, pausing for the effect she planned days ago. Harper's share of expenses drawn from your grandparents' estate. Total, $22,000. That line changes the temperature because my grandparents are the family ghost story. Henry and Margaret Caldwell died in a car accident in 2013. I was 17. They were the only people who made me feel like I was enough. After the funeral, my mother took over everything. Executor, paperwork, accounts, the cabin, the money. 2 weeks later, her older brother, Uncle Dean, he fought with her at the kitchen table and then vanished. 12 years, no holidays, no calls. Mom told everyone Dean was jealous, unstable, not safe, and everyone believed her because Mom always sounds certain, and certainty feels like safety to people who don't want conflict. She folds the paper. That's $57,000, she says softly, like she's grieving. $57,000 this family invested in someone who has never once said thank you. The room is quiet. Whether Harper should continue to be part of our gatherings and any future family decisions. Vote. The word feels unreal, like you can't vote gravity out of the sky, but apparently you can vote a daughter out of a living room. I look at Eliza. She stares at her hands. I look at Dad. He studies the floor like it's an escape hatch. I look at the semicircle of faces, people I've helped, babysat for, driven places, listened to while they cried about their own kids, and not one person says, "Cynthia, this is insane." Not one person asks to see receipts. My mother clasps her hands like a church elder. All in favor of removing Harper from family events and any claims on this family's resources, raise your hand. 1 second. 2. Aunt Ruth's hand goes up first, straight and sure. Then another. Then another. Hands rise across the room like a slow wave, some reluctant, some eager. One cousin raises his hand while staring at the wall like the wall can forgive him. It doesn't matter. They all go up. I watch my sister. Eliza's hand lifts halfway, pauses, then rises the rest of the way. She still won't look at me. My mother counts names out loud like roll call, savoring each one because the count is the point. Then she turns to the last person who hasn't raised his hand yet. My father. "Paul," she says softly, an instruction dressed as a question. My father stares at his beer. And then, slowly, like his arm weighs 1,000 pounds, he raises his hand. That's when my ears start ringing. My dad's hand, against me. My mother nods once, satisfied. "It's over," she says, voice low and controlled. "I've already spoken with an attorney. You are no longer welcome at family gatherings. Any claim you think you have, consider it void." I want to ask, attorney for what, exactly? The crime of existing near you, but my throat won't cooperate. I turn toward the door. My coat is on the hook. My keys are in my pocket. 3 steps, and I'm gone. I take the first step, and the front door opens. A gust of air sweeps through the room. A man steps inside, gray hair, worn jacket, holding a small metal lockbox with a bank sticker on the side. Uncle Dean. Every head turns. Someone gasps. My mother's face goes blank. Not angry, not surprised. Blank. Like someone unplugged her performance. It lasts half a second. Then she rebuilds the smile, but I saw the fear underneath it. "Dean," she says tightly, "you weren't invited." "I know," he says calmly. "That's why I'm here." He steps forward, sets the lockbox on the coffee table, and looks at me like he's seeing the kid I used to be. "I should have done this years ago," he says. "I'm sorry it took so long." My mother takes a sharp step forward. "Whatever you came here to do, don't." Dean doesn't argue. He just opens the lockbox. 2 metal snaps. Small sound, but in that room it lands like a gunshot. Inside are documents, organized with tabs, stamped and dated. 12 years of silence turned into paper. Dean pulls out a page. "This is the original will of Henry and Margaret Caldwell," he says, and places it on the table. Then he lays a second document beside it. "And this is the version Cynthia filed. 2 wills, same names, different signatures." My mother's mouth opens. Nothing comes out. Dean slides forward a third document. "Certified forensic handwriting report," he says. "Those signatures are not consistent with our parents' handwriting." People lean in, squint, compare. For the first time tonight, they think. My mother tries to launch her old story. He's lying. He's jealous. Dean raises one hand, not aggressive, just final. "I don't need you to believe me," he says. "I have certified records." Then he lays out bank statements, originals, stamped, dated. "Estate withdrawals," he says, tracing the lines, starting 3 months after the funeral. Numbers repeat, transfers like a heartbeat. "Over 18 months, Dean says, $212,000 was moved out of our parents' estate into one personal account." He taps the receiving name, Cynthia Sloan. The room makes a sound like it forgot how to breathe. Aunt Ruth stares at the statements with her mouth slightly open, and I watch her hand, the first hand that voted me out, drop into her lap like it's suddenly heavy. My father stands without realizing he's standing. Eliza's hands shake as she picks up a page. "Mom," she whispers, voice thin as glass. "The tuition you said you paid for me, did that come from Grandma and Grandpa's money?" My mother looks at Eliza for a long, dangerous second, like she wants to use the old voice that used to shut us up as kids. But the room is watching now. She doesn't answer, and her silence is louder than a confession. Then my father finally speaks, and it's only one word, but it changes everything. Sin. Not gentle, not angry, awake. Is any of this true? My mother tries to pivot, fast, because pivoting is her oxygen. Her shoulders drop, tears appear. Do you know how hard it was? She says. After they died, I handled everything. Dean disappeared. Paul didn't help. I carried the taxes, the cabin, the paperwork, all of it. Maybe I made mistakes, but I did it for this family. For a moment, a few faces soften, because guilt is her favorite fog. Then Dean speaks again, flat and clean, and the fog can't hold. Mistakes are forgetting a form, he says. You forged their signatures. You rewrote their will. You stole money from your dead parents. He pauses, then drops the sentence that breaks the room open. And then you blamed Harper. My mother's eyes flash. Dean doesn't blink. You needed a cover story, he says. So you told everyone Harper was expensive, a drain, the reason money disappeared. Then he turns to the semicircle of relatives. Harper was 17. She couldn't defend herself. She didn't even know there was money to defend. My mother explodes. Get out! Dean stands, but before he leaves, he places the entire folder on the coffee table, every tab visible like colored warning lights. I'm leaving, he says, but these papers aren't. Something shifts. People who raised their hands now stare at their own hands like they're seeing them for the first time. Cousin Kyle steps toward me. Harper, he says, rough. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I nod because my throat still won't work. Aunt Ruth stands up slowly, like her knees are suddenly older, and she walks out of the room without a word. Then another person stands. Then another. My mother's stage empties, chair by chair, and the cruelest part is that nobody has to yell at her. They just stop looking at her, and for someone like my mother, being unseen is worse than being accused. Outside on the back porch, Dean tells me why it took 12 years. I tried back then, he says quietly. I confronted her. She told everyone I was unstable and dangerous, and they believed her. I lost the family. I lost holidays. I lost watching Jenna grow up around her cousins. I needed evidence that couldn't be talked over. He rubs his hands together like the memory still stings. Bank-certified records, expert analysis, a lawyer's review. She can talk over feelings. She can't talk over stamps. Eliza sits beside me, crying silently. I raised my hand, she whispers. I actually raised my hand. My voice comes out calm even though my body feels like it's splitting. An apology doesn't erase a raised hand, I say. But we can start somewhere. Jenna squeezes my shoulder and whispers, my dad never stopped saying your name. Fireworks pop in the distance, bright and meaningless, while my whole family is rearranging itself behind the screen door. Over the next 2 days, the town does what small towns do. It digests. People text me apologies like they're paying a debt in pennies. Some are sincere, some are scared. I answer the same way every time. Thank you, but I need time. 2 days later, my father knocks on my apartment door, unshaved, eyes red, wearing the same flannel from the party like he slept in it. I went to the cabin, he says. I read every page. He sits at my tiny table and stares at his hands like he's trying to learn a new language. I saw renovation bills before, he admits. I asked your mother once. She said Dean agreed to give up his share. I believed her because it was easier. Because silence was cheaper. He looks up, and his voice shakes. I'm done being quiet. I tell him the truth that took me 29 years to say out loud. Dad, I love you. But love doesn't cancel what happened. I need you to show me, not tell me, that things are different now. He nods. No speech, no excuses. A week later, Dean and I sit with an attorney in Marrow Creek. She reviews the documents and says, plain and professional. This is well documented. You have a strong civil claim. Criminal charges would be up to the district attorney. Dean says, I don't want Cynthia in prison. I want the money returned to who it belongs to. I say, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my grandparents wrote something down and someone erased it, then blamed a teenager. By late August, a settlement is reached. My mother agrees to return the education trust, $68,000, split exactly as intended. $34,000 to me, $34,000 to Eliza. Dean receives $86,000 of his intercepted share. There remains $58,000 she claims was spent on family expenses, but cannot document. To make the payments, she sells her SUV and pulls from retirement savings. I use my money to pay down my student loans, because I want the debt gone. The debt I carried while money meant for me sat under my mother's name. The rest I put into savings, not for a big plan, but for a simple reason. For the first time in my life, I have something clean that no one can claim I owe them. My father starts changing in small, awkward, honest ways. Weekly calls, a toolbox at my sink, a therapist appointment he admits like a confession. Eliza starts therapy too. We meet for coffee and learn each other without our mother narrating who we're allowed to be. 3 months after that 4th of July, my mother calls. Her voice is smaller. Can we talk? She asks. I agree, but on my terms. A public coffee shop, neutral ground. She starts to explain. I stop her gently. Mom, Jan, I'm not here for explanations. I'm here for boundaries. I give her 4. Never discuss my finances publicly again. Never recruit an audience against me. Accept that I choose which family events I attend and start real therapy. I add, quiet but true. If you can't do those things, we stay where we are. And I'll be fine either way. Because I finally learned something I wish I'd learned at 17. Understanding why someone hurt you doesn't mean you let them keep doing it. People always ask me if being voted out by your family is the worst thing that can happen. It isn't. The worst thing is staying in a family where you have to pay. In silence, in shame, in pieces of yourself, just to belong. And for a long time, I paid because I thought that was the price of love. After the settlement, the strangest thing wasn't the money, it was the quiet. My mother had built her power on being the narrator, the person everyone called to confirm what was really true. And suddenly people stopped calling. In Ashford Cove, nobody confronts you if they can avoid it. They just rearrange their lives around you. At church, the pew beside my mother became an empty buffer zone. At the grocery store, conversations that used to bloom around her cart suddenly needed to get home. She tried the old moves, long messages about sacrifice, dramatic sighs on the phone, but this time there was nowhere for the story to land, because the paperwork had already hit the ground like a weight. My father moved to the couch and, for the first time, didn't climb back into the master bedroom just because it was easier. He started calling Dean weekly, 2 men rebuilding a bridge, one ordinary sentence at a time. One Saturday, over coffee at a diner, Dad said something that almost made me drop my fork. I started seeing a therapist. He said it like he was confessing to a crime. My voice shakes when I disagree, he admitted, embarrassed. But I'm learning to do it anyway. And I didn't clap for him. I didn't rush to forgive. I just watched him do the slow, unglamorous work of becoming a different kind of man. Eliza started therapy too. We met for coffee and learned each other without our mother narrating who we were allowed to be. In December, we had a smaller holiday dinner at Aunt Ruth's, 12 people instead of 29, mismatched plates, slightly overcooked rolls, and it was imperfect in the way truth usually is. No semicircle of chairs, no speeches, no votes. Dean said grace, and his voice cracked on the last word, and he didn't hide it. Eliza brought a casserole she made herself without Mom directing every pinch of salt, and nobody cared that it was a little dry because it was hers. At the end of the night, an envelope appeared in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was an old photo of my grandparents holding me as a toddler, my grandmother's hand on my head like a promise. On the back, in her handwriting, our little counselor. I sat on my kitchen floor and cried the kind of cry you only have when something you lost comes back in a form you didn't expect. My mother texted me once late at night, "You turned my family against me." I read it twice, felt the familiar pull to explain myself, to smooth things over, to make her comfortable. And then I deleted it. Because for 29 years I lived like my job was to manage her emotions. And that job nearly erased me. Boundaries aren't punishments, they're oxygen. The first time you set one, guilt hits like a truck, especially when the person who hurt you trained you to confuse guilt with love. But guilt is just a feeling, and feelings aren't always facts. That night, after I deleted the message, I slept through till morning. And the quiet in my apartment felt like my life finally belonged to me. If you're listening and you've been cast as the villain in someone else's story, remember this. You don't have to argue with a script you didn't write. You only have to stop performing in it. That's the real freedom nobody teaches you. Choosing yourself, even when your hands are shaking. My name is Harper Sloan. I'm 29 years old, and for the first time in my life, I don't owe anyone an explanation for who I am. If this story touched something in you, hit like and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but for the next person who needs to hear it and hasn't found it yet. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from, what time it is right now, and what's one truth you've been afraid to say out loud. Even one sentence can change a life when it's finally said in your own voice. And if you're wondering what happened next, what my mother did when she realized she couldn't control the room anymore, bone and the one condition I gave her before I would ever sit at a family table again, that story is waiting for you right after this.